So if we ask children what's wrong with the code as we've got it so far, then we should get answers around the fact that the answer that's being checked isn't correct, and so our if condition here isn't working as we want it to, and it means that the questions bit is working here, but the check answers bit of our functionality does not work. So it doesn't matter how nice we make our background, etc. look, if we don't have the functionality of the quiz, then the game isn't good enough. So we're going to try and solve this problem, and the only way we can really solve this problem is by making use of variables, and that's what we'll be doing in this section. So the use of variables may not be something that the children have come across in year 5, so this will be a new concept for them, and the reason we need variables is because we want to be able to store the random numbers that we've got and refer to them later when we do the check for our answer. So the way variables work is, one way of thinking about it is that it's a post-it note on which we can write stuff, but the post-it note has a name. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make a variable, and that's provided under data here. I think the block is different in the version of Scratch that you may have downloaded and installed on your computer. So when we go to data, we have two options. We've got make a variable, make a list, and we're going to choose the make a variable option. When we click on this button, we will get a range of other options associated with a variable. So if we click on this, we're going to give our variable a name. Now, when we create variables, we should always try and give them meaningful names. So in this case, we are going to be storing the random numbers that we've got. So maybe we could call this the first one num1, or you could call it random number 1. And at the moment, I'm just going to leave all the other options as they are and just say OK. I now have various options that I can choose. I can set num1 to a particular number. I can change it by different values. I can show it or I can hide it. There's a tick next to num1, and num1 also appears in the screen at the top here. So if I undo the tick, then that disappears, and if I'm ticked on it, then num1 appears on the top of the screen there. So what I'd like to do is I would like to set my first variable not to 0, but to this pick random number 3 to 12. So out of my join, I am going to drag out this very first pick and place it over the option to set num1 to 0. So I've now got a blank in here, which is not good. So instead, what I need instead of the blank is to say, okay, this is the num1 I need to cover that join. And what this instruction is doing is basically saying, give me a random number, store it in something called num1, and then when you join things together, whatever's in num1, I want you to put that there. Okay, and this means that in our answer we'll be able to refer to num1 as well. So let's do the same again. We need to pick, we need to set another variable for this second random number. So let's make a variable and call it num2 and say OK. And now in our set command, we can drop down the list and choose which one we set to a particular value. So let's drag this out, and you can place it either at the top or in between or underneath the num1 command, but this is all one block of code. And now I need to set the second num1 to my other random number here. So the two random numbers, one is going to be put into num1, the other one's going to be put into num2, and then I can refer to them later on. So now I need to put num2 into the empty join command that I've got there. So my join command stays exactly the same, but instead of referring directly to the random numbers, it's referring to num1 and num2, which are the names I have given to these numbers. That's a way of thinking about variables. And now to fix so I can double click and make sure that this is still going to work as it should, which is the answer is still not going to be correct. So now I need to correct my answer, and to correct my answer I'm going to go back to my operators, and I am going to choose the multiply operator here, and this is going to be my product. So I'm going to make a variable here. I can do it two ways. I can either drag this over the 8 and put num1 and num2 in those two, or I could make another variable. So the choice is really up to you, and you can show children both ways of doing it. So if I do it this way, where I'm going to multiply the two numbers together, so if I go to data here, I can drag num1 over the first item and num2 over the second item, and then drag that over into the answer. And now my questions and answers should work. So if I double click, it's asking me 4 times 10, and if I type in 40, I get that correct, and I'm going to check it again, and 8 times 11, so I'm going to do 88 and check it again. So every time we make a change to the code, we should check it and make sure that it actually does what we expect it to do. So we'll at this point we'll ask children questions around, well, what else is this code not able to do yet?